Most people think life changes arrive like a thunderstorm. Loud, dramatic, impossible to miss. But the truth is stranger than that. The real turning point often begins in silence, not with chaos around you, but with a quiet shift inside your perception. And if you know how to recognize that moment, you can sense your next reality forming long before it appears. There is a very specific moment that happens right before your life changes. Almost nobody recognizes it for what it truly is. It does not feel dramatic. It does not feel overwhelming. And it rarely feels emotional in the way people expect. What it feels like is clarity, a subtle sharpening of awareness, as if the fog inside your mind is slowly lifting. Not all at once, but enough for you to notice that something within you has begun to reorganize. You start realizing that certain things no longer hold the same power over you. Conversations that once pulled you into reaction now feel strangely distant. Decisions that used to trap you in endless thinking begin to feel simpler. Your focus tightens, not through effort, but through perception. You begin to sense direction without needing constant proof. And this is the moment most people misunderstand. That increase in intuition is not random. It appears when a new probability in the quantum field begins quietly organizing around your life. Before a shift becomes visible in the outer world, it first stabilizes within you. In quantum physics, change does not occur the moment something appears. It occurs when a possibility stops scattering and begins settling into form. Imagine countless potential outcomes moving like drifting clouds. At first, they swirl without direction, but when coherence forms, those possibilities begin gathering toward one clear pattern. That gathering is subtle, but your body can feel it. Your nervous system is not separate from the field of reality. Your brain and heart generate electromagnetic signals that constantly interact with the informational layer of the universe. So when coherence begins increasing in the field, coherence begins increasing within you as well. And that inner coherence feels like intuition becoming stronger. Not louder in sound, louder in certainty. You may not hear a voice, you may not see obvious signs, but the signal becomes steady. It repeats in small nudges. It returns when you try to ignore it. And most importantly, it feels calm. That calmness matters. Anxiety jumps and shakes. True intuition remains still. Right before a quantum shift, you do not feel chaos building. You feel alignment quietly forming beneath the surface of your life. It is similar to standing beside railway tracks before a train arrives. You cannot see the train yet, but the metal beneath your feet begins to vibrate. That vibration is not imagination, it is momentum. And in the language of the quantum field, momentum means coherence is growing. This is why, before major transitions, people often describe a strange kind of confidence that logic cannot explain. They cannot say why they feel ready. They cannot justify why they feel calm. But something inside them already knows. Because the shift has already begun internally, your old identity slowly loosens its grip. Emotional reactions tied to the past begin losing their intensity. Patterns that once consumed your attention start looking transparent, almost predictable. You stop chasing approval from everyone around you. You stop forcing outcomes that refuse to move. Your reactions soften. Your presence deepens. This is not indifference. It is reorganization. When a new probability becomes stronger than the old one, the system begins transferring energy toward that new direction. The old timeline slowly loses emotional fuel. The new one gains internal stability, and stability is what amplifies intuition. Think back to a moment when your life changed in a meaningful way. Before that moment arrived, there was likely a period where you felt different, quieter, more aware, certain in a way that did not need anyone else's approval. You were not trying harder. You were sensing deeper, and sensing deeper becomes possible when noise begins to fade. Right before a quantum shift, the mental static that usually fills your mind starts decreasing. The urge to control every outcome weakens. The pressure to figure everything out softens. Instead of frantic thinking, you begin observing. Instead of spiraling doubt, you feel grounded curiosity. It almost feels as if your system already knows something is approaching, but it does not panic about it. Because intuition does not spike like excitement, it stabilizes like gravity. This is where many people make their biggest mistake. They believe that if something significant is about to happen, it should feel intense. They expect fireworks, overwhelming emotions, endless signs confirming their path. But real quantum shifts do not arrive with noise. They grow through coherence, and coherence feels like clarity. When intuition grows stronger before a shift, it is not because the universe suddenly decided to speak to you. It is because your internal state has finally become quiet enough to hear what was always present. The signal was never missing. Your system was simply too full of noise to detect it. Now that the noise is fading, you begin sensing the direction your reality is leaning toward. But this leads to a deeper question. If intuition grows stronger before a shift, what exactly is it detecting? Is it the future, a higher self guiding you, or the reorganization of probabilities inside the quantum field? The answer is far more precise than mystical. And once you understand it, you will stop doubting the signal when it appears. Because what feels like intuition becoming stronger is actually something else. Reality itself is getting closer. When intuition increases before a shift, it is not magic. It is regulation. Your brain is constantly predicting what will happen next. Every second it compares incoming information with memories stored in your nervous system. It fills the gaps. It forecasts possible outcomes long before you consciously notice them. You believe you are reacting to reality, but in truth, your nervous system is continuously forecasting it. And right before a quantum shift, that forecasting model begins updating. In normal stress states, the brain operates in fast beta waves. These patterns are reactive and narrow your perception. When the brain remains trapped in chronic beta activity, your system scans for threats rather than possibilities. Your awareness becomes focused on survival instead of expansion. Your brain is built to protect you, so when it is overwhelmed, it automatically chooses safety over expansion. In that state, survival becomes the priority. Your perception narrows, and intuition quietly disappears beneath layers of mental noise. But something remarkable begins to happen when a new identity starts forming within you. Your nervous system begins to reorganize. The amygdala, the part of the brain responsible for threat detection, slowly relaxes. At the same time, the prefrontal cortex becomes more active, bringing greater clarity and regulation. Your brain waves begin shifting as well. Alpha waves start strengthening. Theta becomes easier to access. Alpha is a fascinating state. It acts like a bridge between analytical thinking and deeper subconscious awareness. Theta goes even further. It is the state where emotional memories can be rewritten and entirely new neural connections can form. As alpha and theta increase, your perception widens. Instead of constantly scanning for danger, your mind begins noticing patterns. And intuition is essentially pattern recognition, but not random pattern recognition, coherent pattern recognition. When the body enters a more ordered state, subtle signals become easier to detect. Research on heart-brain coherence shows something very interesting. When the rhythm of the heart becomes smooth and steady, communication between the heart and brain synchronizes. In that synchronized state, cognitive clarity improves. Emotional stability increases. The entire body begins operating in a state of internal order. And when internal order rises, sensitivity to subtle information rises with it. Imagine trying to listen to a distant radio station. If the air is full of static, the signal feels faint and distorted. But when the interference fades, the same signal suddenly becomes clear. Your nervous system functions in a similar way. Before a major shift in life, many people notice an unusual calmness settling inside them. They are not euphoric. They are not afraid. They simply feel grounded. Decisions begin feeling less complicated. Old emotional triggers lose their intensity. You no longer feel the same impulse to react to everything around you. This is coherence rising. As coherence increases, the brain becomes better at predictive processing. Instead of interpreting life as isolated events, the brain begins recognizing trajectories. It starts sensing where things are likely heading based on subtle cues that your conscious mind is not actively tracking. That sensation of knowing is what we call intuition. But there is an even deeper layer to this process. Your body does not only process memories from the past, it also processes probabilities. The brain is constantly running simulations of possible futures. Most of these simulations are shaped by your past identity and previous experiences. But when identity begins shifting, those simulations begin changing as well. And when the simulations change, your emotional baseline changes. This is why intuition often arrives as a quiet feeling of inner agreement, a subtle sense that something simply fits. It does not feel like emotional excitement, it feels like prediction stabilizing. Right before a quantum shift, your nervous system stops treating the old timeline as the most likely outcome. Instead, it begins recognizing a different trajectory as more probable. And because the body is designed to conserve energy, it relaxes when its predictions feel stable. Relaxation is not weakness, it is alignment. When your internal model of reality begins matching the probability forming in the field around you, tension naturally decreases. Your system stops struggling, it stops forcing outcomes, it stops endlessly analyzing every possibility. This reduction of internal friction allows intuition to become clearer, not because something outside of you suddenly started shouting, but because the resistance inside you stopped interrupting the signal. This is also why forced manifestation rarely works. When you feel tense, urgent, or obsessive, your nervous system broadcasts instability, and instability produces scattered signals. Scattered signals delay the moment when reality chooses a direction. But when your internal state becomes stable, something changes. You become a clean transmitter, and clean transmission feels like unmistakable intuition. At first, the signs may appear in small ways. You suddenly feel clear about who truly belongs in your life. You feel a calm certainty about leaving something behind that once felt impossible to release, or a quiet but persistent pull toward a direction you had not seriously considered before. There is no drama attached to it, just steadiness. And steadiness is the key, because quantum collapse requires coherence. If probabilities are constantly fluctuating, nothing stabilizes. But when coherence increases, outcomes begin forming faster. Your nervous system mirrors this same principle. When you are internally chaotic, perception becomes distorted. When you are internally ordered, perception sharpens. And right before a quantum shift, order increases inside the body. Your breathing slows naturally, your awareness becomes more present. You react less impulsively. Instead of immediately responding, you begin observing more carefully. Some people even describe a subtle sensation that time is slowing down. Moments feel clearer, decisions feel less rushed. This is not imagination, it is neurological synchronization. Your system is preparing to choose a new trajectory, and as that preparation deepens, intuition grows stronger. But there is an important detail most people overlook. If you mistake this calmness for boredom, you may try to disturb it. If you interpret this steadiness as stagnation, you may start chasing unnecessary stimulation. And if you interrupt this quiet alignment by seeking constant validation from the outside world, the forming coherence can weaken, because intuition requires listening, and listening requires stillness. And this leads us to the next layer of understanding. If intuition becomes clearer as coherence rises before a quantum shift, an important question appears. What exactly is reorganizing in reality that your nervous system can feel? And why does ignoring that signal sometimes delay the very change you have been waiting for? To understand this, we have to step beyond the brain and look at the deeper structure of reality itself. In quantum physics, reality is not solid from the beginning. Before something becomes real in your experience, it exists as probability. Layers of potential outcomes overlapping like invisible currents. These possibilities are always moving. Some grow stronger, others fade away before they ever appear in the physical world. The real mystery is not that possibilities exist. The real mystery is why one of them becomes your life. The answer is coherence. When a probability becomes internally organized, when its structure stops conflicting with itself, it begins to strengthen. Its signal grows, not because it is forced into existence, but because it has become stable enough to hold form. Physicist and philosopher Amit Goswami describes consciousness as part of this process. The observer is not just watching reality unfold. Awareness interacts with possibility. It influences which pattern becomes stable enough to emerge. But here is a subtle detail many people overlook. The collapse of possibility into reality is rarely instantaneous. Before something appears in your outer life, there is a period of convergence. and convergence can be felt. Right now, countless possible futures surround your life. Different paths, different relationships, different versions of who you could become. Most of them remain weak and scattered. But occasionally, one trajectory begins aligning with your identity, your emotional state, and the condition of your nervous system. When that alignment begins forming, the probability strengthens. It starts drawing informational energy toward itself. As this happens, the surrounding noise from competing possibilities begins fading. The field around that emerging path becomes more ordered, and your intuition detects that order. Not because intuition is mystical, but because your nervous system is part of the same field. Your brain and heart produce electromagnetic activity that continuously interacts with your environment. You are not standing outside reality observing it from a distance. You are inside the exchange. So when a new trajectory begins stabilizing, your internal state gradually shifts to match it. You feel less scattered. Your attention becomes sharper. A strange certainty appears, even when you cannot explain why. This is not wishful thinking, it is resonance. Resonance occurs when two systems begin vibrating in harmony with each other. When your internal state starts matching the frequency of a stabilizing probability, the signal grows clearer. And that growing clarity feels like intuition becoming stronger. Not because something brand new is being created, but because one possibility is becoming more dominant than the others. Imagine slowly tuning a radio. At first, all you hear is static, but as the dial approaches the correct frequency, the interference fades and the music becomes recognizable. The song was always present. You simply had to align the receiver. Before a quantum shift, something similar happens inside you. Your internal dial adjusts, but this adjustment rarely comes from pushing harder. It usually happens when you begin releasing what no longer matches who you are becoming. The old identity starts losing coherence. You may notice subtle detachment from habits you once defended. Emotional reactions that used to feel automatic begin weakening. Certain desires lose their urgency. Sometimes this stage even feels confusing. You may wonder why something that once defined you suddenly feels distant. But this is not regression, it is redistribution of probability. Energy is quietly withdrawing from one timeline and stabilizing into another. As that stabilization grows, your intuitive signal becomes stronger. And this is where the process becomes powerful. If you listen during this phase, if you trust the calm clarity that appears, the shift begins accelerating. But if you interrupt that signal with constant doubt, excessive analysis, or the need for external confirmation, interference returns. Interference brings back fluctuation, and fluctuation slows the moment of collapse. This is why many people remember moments when they felt a clear, intuitive nudge but ignored it. Only later do they realize that the feeling was pointing toward the very change that eventually happened anyway. The signal was accurate, but hesitation temporarily destabilized it. Before a quantum shift becomes visible, the field reorganizes quietly. There are no dramatic announcements, no fireworks, just a gradual increase of coherence in one direction. And as that coherence grows, your perception becomes sharper. You begin recognizing patterns more easily. You anticipate outcomes without consciously calculating them. You feel alignment or misalignment almost instantly when encountering people, places, or opportunities. Sometimes you may also notice synchronicities beginning to cluster, not in overwhelming bursts, but in subtle alignment. The right conversations appear at the right time. Unexpected opportunities emerge quietly. Timing begins to feel less forced and more natural. These are not supernatural events. These subtle adjustments are signs that probabilities are converging. When a new timeline begins gaining strength, the outer world starts adjusting in small, almost invisible ways long before the larger change becomes obvious. Your intuition is the early detection system. It senses the convergence before your eyes can see it. That is why the signal becomes clearer right before a shift. The probability is no longer drifting between options. It is organizing itself with direction. Yet there is one obstacle that interrupts this process more than anything else. It is not a lack of belief, it is overreaction. The moment people feel the signal becoming stronger, they panic. They question it. They try to control it. They search for reassurance. They demand certainty before trusting what they already sense. And that reaction introduces instability into a system that was becoming stable. The shift does not disappear, it simply pauses. Because collapse requires steadiness. If intuition is the internal detection of rising coherence, why do so many people override it at the exact moment it matters most? And more importantly, how do you remain steady enough for the shift to complete? Here is the paradox. The moment intuition becomes the clearest is often the moment you feel most tempted to ignore it. Not because the signal is weak, but because it is strong enough to challenge the identity you have been living through. Identity does not dissolve quietly, even when the old version of you feels exhausted, even when it no longer fits your life. It still resists change. The nervous system interprets familiarity as safety, and a quantum shift, even a positive one, represents unfamiliar territory. So right before collapse, something subtle happens internally. You feel the signal, you recognize the direction, and then doubt appears. Not dramatic doubt, reasonable doubt. Questions like, what if I am wrong? What if this feeling is only temporary? What if I am misinterpreting the situation? Suddenly, the clarity that once felt natural becomes clouded by analysis. This is not random. When coherence rises, old neural patterns begin destabilizing, and destabilization creates discomfort. Your brain attempts to restore equilibrium by returning to familiar thinking loops. Overthinking is not wisdom, it is the nervous system trying to regain control. But control introduces interference, and interference weakens the coherence that was forming. Remember this principle. Collapse requires stability. If you react emotionally to the signal, whether through fear or excitement, you introduce fluctuation. Fluctuation brings back competing probabilities, and competing probabilities slow the moment when reality settles into form. This is why many people say they sensed change coming, and then nothing seemed to happen. The change did not vanish, it was interrupted. Right before a quantum shift, life can feel strangely suspended. You are not moving forward quickly, but you are not falling backward either. You are simply hovering. This hovering is not stagnation, it is the pause before reorganization. Yet most people struggle to tolerate that pause. They rush to make something happen. They seek external confirmation. They ask others for advice. They search endlessly for signs. They try to force momentum. But when action comes from anxiety, the collapse selects outcomes aligned with instability. When action comes from coherence, the collapse selects outcomes aligned with order. The difference may look invisible from the outside. Internally, it is profound. So how do you stop overriding the signal? You regulate instead of react. When intuition appears strongly, do not dramatize it. Do not rush to act immediately, and do not inflate the moment with emotional intensity. Simply observe it, breathe with it, allow the signal to stabilize. The most powerful intuitive decisions rarely feel explosive. They feel calm, even when they require courage. If the feeling inside you is urgent and frantic, fear is likely attached to the signal. But when the feeling is steady and grounded, that is alignment. Right before your life changes, your role is not to act dramatically. Your role is to remain coherent, slow your breathing, reduce the mental noise, resist the urge to prove anything to the outside world. Let the probability strengthen. Let your identity adapt. Let reality reorganize without interference. Instead of constantly asking for more signs, try something simpler. Quietly choose trust, not because words themselves transform reality, but because choosing trust stabilizes your internal state. It reduces fluctuation, and reduced fluctuation strengthens coherence. Coherence is what allows the shift to finish forming. You do not need more evidence. You need steadiness. When you stop interrupting the process, the reorganization completes naturally. And when the change finally appears, it rarely feels shocking. It feels inevitable. Yet there is an even deeper layer to understand. Because intuition becoming clearer before a shift is not only about sensing probability, it is about identity evolving. The version of you who can hear that signal clearly is not the same version who once doubted it. Intuition does not become louder because the universe suddenly begins speaking. It becomes clearer because you have become quieter. That quietness is not accidental. It is identity recalibration. The version of you who constantly reacted, overanalyzed, and searched for approval lives in noise. That identity survives through tension. It measures safety through control. But right before a quantum shift, that identity begins losing coherence. You may notice it in subtle ways. The internal arguments in your mind become less intense. You feel less need to prove yourself to others. Situations that once pulled you into emotional storms now pass through your awareness more gently. You begin choosing calmness without forcing it. This is not motivational growth, it is energetic reorganization. Joe Dispenza often explains that personality shapes personal reality. If your personality remains unchanged, your future tends to repeat predictable patterns. So, before a new future can appear, the structure of your personality must loosen. And that loosening often feels like detachment. You detach from old emotional loops. You detach from the urgency surrounding certain desires. You detach from identities that once seemed essential to who you were. Within that space of detachment, something new stabilizes. A quieter self, a more regulated nervous system, a more coherent emotional baseline. This coherent baseline allows intuition to become stronger. Because intuition does not increase through effort, it increases through stability. Consider this carefully. If intuition is resonance with an emerging probability, then the clearer your internal state becomes, the stronger that resonance will be. If your emotions are scattered, the signal becomes distorted. If you are internally steady, the signal becomes precise. This explains why some individuals appear consistently fortunate. They are not chasing outcomes. They are stable in their identity. Their internal state does not swing wildly with every external circumstance. They do not collapse probabilities from panic. They collapse them from coherence. And coherence feels like calm certainty. Right before a quantum shift, the version of you capable of sustaining that calm certainty quietly emerges. Not dramatically, not loudly, but unmistakably. You may even lose interest in things that once excited you. Not because life feels dull, but because your nervous system no longer requires constant stimulation to feel alive. Excitement and alignment are not the same. Alignment is quieter. This is the level where manifestation stops being something you try to perform. Instead, it becomes something that follows who you are. When identity stabilizes at a new frequency, the field responds naturally. Amit Goswami describes consciousness as selecting possibilities that match its structure. If your identity remains structured around fear, the outcomes that appear will mirror that fear. But if your identity stabilizes around coherence, the outcomes that appear will mirror that coherence. Intuition acts as the feedback mechanism. It tells you when your internal structure matches a forming possibility. When the signal becomes clearer before a shift, it means your identity has finally become consistent enough to recognize the match. This is why forcing outcomes tends to backfire. Forcing creates instability. Chasing creates instability. Obsessing creates instability. Stability accelerates collapse. And stability requires one essential foundation: a regulated nervous system, slow breathing, reduced reactivity, less emotional volatility. When the body becomes regulated, perception sharpens. And when perception sharpens, intuitive signals become unmistakable. You no longer need signs. You no longer need validation. You no longer need someone else to confirm what you already feel. At a certain point, the knowing inside you becomes steady enough that outside validation simply stops mattering. You just know. And knowing without panic is often the final sign that a shift is about to complete. Because when you truly listen, when you stay steady long enough for the probability to finish organizing, the change that appears in your life rarely feels shocking. It feels familiar, almost like recognizing a place you somehow knew before you arrived. Something inside you sensed it long before it became visible. And once you stop interrupting the process, something powerful begins to happen. You stop asking, "Is it happening?" And you begin realizing that it already is. There comes a moment when the struggle with the signal quietly dissolves. Not because you collected more evidence, not because someone finally approved your path, not because the external world changed first, but because the resistance inside you softened. And the moment resistance softens, the shift accelerates. This is the phase where everything begins to feel inevitable. You are no longer trying to force reality into movement. You are no longer scanning your life for proof that something is changing. You stop pushing conversations. You stop chasing outcomes. You stop trying to control timing. Something within you has settled, and that settling is powerful. In quantum mechanics, the observer must remain stable for a probability to collapse into reality. If the observer keeps fluctuating, the probability keeps fluctuating as well. But when the observer holds coherence long enough, one trajectory naturally becomes dominant. That is exactly what happens when you trust intuition. You are no longer collapsing reality from fear. You are no longer collapsing reality from urgency. You are collapsing reality from alignment. And alignment feels very different. It does not feel like adrenaline. It does not feel desperate. It feels grounded, quiet, certain. Right before a quantum shift completes, many people notice something unexpected, calm, almost anticlimactic, as if the emotional drama surrounding the situation has slowly drained away. But that is not stagnation, it is completion. Life on the surface may even become quieter for a moment. Conversations slow down. Momentum appears to pause. The environment around you responds differently than it used to. Yet beneath that stillness, probabilities are locking into place. This is the moment many people accidentally interrupt. They see the quiet and assume something is wrong. They interpret the pause as delay, so they rush to create movement again. But interference destabilizes what was almost finished. When life becomes quiet before a shift, it is not withdrawing, it is consolidating. And when intuition becomes clearer during that quiet phase, it is not demanding action, it is signaling readiness. The difference between those who experience deep transformation and those who remain stuck in repeating cycles is rarely intelligence. It is steadiness, the ability to remain internally stable long enough for reality to reorganize. At this stage, identity matters more than desire. If you still see yourself as someone who constantly needs proof, you will keep searching for it. And searching introduces instability. But when you begin identifying as someone who trusts inner coherence, something changes. You remain steady, and steadiness collapses reality faster than effort ever can. This is why many transformations look sudden from the outside. To others, it appears instant. But internally, it was months of silent alignment. The intuition you felt during that time was not imagination, it was not anxiety, and it was not wishful thinking. It was the earliest stage of inevitability forming. Once you understand this, the quiet phases of your life stop feeling threatening. You stop panicking when nothing seems to move. You stop mistaking stillness for absence. Instead, you begin recognizing stillness as consolidation. You recognize intuition as alignment, and you realize something important. Your job is not to force reality to change. Your job is to remain coherent long enough for the change to complete itself. Because right before a quantum shift, life does not explode. It refines. Your mind grows quieter. Your nervous system steadies. Your perception sharpens. And then, almost without drama, reality rearranges itself to match the version of you who finally became stable enough to hear the signal. So listen carefully, stay steady, and allow the shift to finish.